As part of our continuing content and ensuring that we're keeping you all abreast of what we're seeing in the marketplace, and given some of the things that we discussed earlier, we're going to kick it over to Scott. And I believe Lisa is going to weigh in a bit on this presentation as well, who's going to give us an overarching view of the cybersecurity landscape as we're seeing it. So with that, I'll kick it to you, Scott.
All right. Thanks, Tim. Appreciate it. Uh, I noticed at the beginning of the call when everybody was doing their introductions that everybody was giving their tenure at NetGain. I've been at NetGain for 11 years, but Jeremy made a point of how long he's been in the industry. When I first started in working with computers, hard drives held 90 meg in total capacity and they weighed 100 pounds. So if that doesn't tell you how long I've been in the industry, I don't know what does. Um, a lot of people say I'm a fear monger. I am not a fear monger. I don't try to be a fear monger. I try to educate. And I want to improve understanding so that businesses can best align their security posture to be preventive and protective of an attack. And that's what I try to do. So if anything that I talk about today scares you, number one, I'm sorry, I wasn't trying to scare you. But if there's anything that NetGain can do to help eliminate that fear, that's what we're here for. So let's talk about our threat landscapes that are out there. Phishing attacks are still probably the number one methodology of an attack vector. Communications of email probably surpassed telecommunications a while back. That is probably the most popular platform, therefore the most levied attack vector that's out there. And it's often undetected. A lot of people don't recognize the fact that they were phished. And unfortunately, there's not a lot of detection platforms sometimes built into security controls that bring that understanding to light so that it could be eliminated. Spear phishing attacks are on the rise too. They're always looking for the whales in the organization, the C-class individuals that provide them the most advantageous threats to what they're trying to do. The IT guys are also in that spear phishing attack because if you can get an administrative level control, the more damage you can do to an enterprise. And social engineering just in general is certainly on the rise in 2020 more. Malware and ransomware deliverables are increasing. I'm going to talk about more about ransomware here in the next slide. I don't want to deal too much in it here, but it is something that's common, and not only in the common of just a standard one-to-one attack, but now there's platforms out there that you can actually pay somebody to do a ransomware attack for you. So these kind of pay to hire ransomware attack vectors are also on the rise, and they're in cyber crime. You talk about mafias, you talk about cyber criminal exploitations from a very large market. Cyber has fell into that, and now instead of trying to brute force their way into a bank with a gun, it's much simpler to be able to threaten that bank by holding their data hostage. And just, of course, the simple threat of only one incident can cause an enormous amount of strife into an organization. Human error, an insider threat. Nobody wants to think about insider threat. Everybody believes in the people that they hire, but it happens. And unfortunately, the employees make a mistake, and sometimes they get disgruntled, and they can cause other problems within the enterprise. Certainly, that happens more and more in businesses. There's a lot of things that associate to that. Misconfigured platforms. Data exfiltration, where you don't know that data is being removed from your organization, either through the firewall or simply from a workstation to a USB drive. And like I said, the disgruntled employee platforms, there has to be measurements in place in your organization to understand when those threats happen to your industry or to your particular vertical. Account takeover is more and more popular. Account takeover is where somebody can assume your identity and then be able to levy threat using you as a recognized platform, a level of trust that it creates to how it is able to spread its maliciousness. That happens a lot now, and it's unfortunate. The Office 365 platform, when a lot of businesses first get placed into that, they fall victim to those styles of attacks because the users just aren't educated to the point of recognizing that this isn't a normal authentication prompt, or this isn't something I was expecting, and they fall victim more and more to those types of things. Education obviously is very important in the elimination of account takeover types of attacks. Password mismanagement, another appropriation for those types of things. Using the same password across multiple platforms, especially work related to personal related, should not happen. And it's unfortunate that it does. And so when something happens, an account is compromised in LinkedIn, for example, if that's the same account and login and password that is in their business account, that's a level of threat. Brute force attacks are all the time. There's scripts out there all the time that are knocking on your external doors trying to force their way in. And it unfortunately happens because there's just not a lot of controls in place sometimes to recognize those knockings at the doors to prevent those from happening. And unpatched vulnerabilities, systems that just simply are not patched up to level, and they're weak because of that. The applications within those, the operating system levels within those, I see a lot of times that the operating systems are simply not patched to a level where they're supported by Microsoft any longer. And what's happening there is that now they are no longer able to be protected in your enterprise. And so those are concerns and things that happen within all infrastructures. Hopefully most of those are under our watch and are eliminated and not in it, but some things do happen, and this is mostly the types of threat landscapes that are out there. So let's talk about the ransomware a little bit more. So from the healthcare industry, there was an announcement out by the CISA, the FBI, and other local groups that have brought to light an understanding that ransomware attacks focused against the healthcare industries are happening. They're happening right now. I had a conversation with Elliot. I'm his CSO, and I provide him some understanding about this. I think he may have already heard about it when I brought it to him, but it's certainly something of great concern. And when I talk about ransomware attacks, a lot of you are familiar with the idea that ransomware creates the inability to access your data. It encrypts your information and holds it hostage so that you have to pay them to get your data back. What was happening is that a lot of businesses would just say, well, I'm not going to pay you, I'm just going to use my backups. So the strategy of a ransomware attack then elevated to the point where now it goes after your backups and it tries to destroy your backups and destroy your ability to recover, so that once again you're put back in that model that the only way I can get my data recovered is now I have to pay the attackers. These attacks are very aggressive. They're very smart. They have a skill set built within them to go out and neutralize your antivirus and malware protection platforms and take them away from you, so that those payloads can be delivered without influence, without being caught or blocked. And then, like I said, the ability for it to actually then start to parse your network and look for data within your backup platforms that are online can put you in a very bad position of being able to recover and restore based on what you believed that you could do. Maybe the expectation of the ELT or your leadership teams that we can recover in 48 hours may become very problematic in those types of situations. I want to ask Lisa. Lisa, you met her earlier with our North Carolina office, and she's very focused in healthcare and does a lot of HIPAA compliance and alignments for her clients. Lisa, what are you seeing in ransomware, and how is it affecting your clients?
Yeah. So, like Scott was just talking about, many of you probably have heard about the recent Joint Security Advisory announcements where there have been targeted attacks. There is a list of about 400 U.S. hospitals that are being targeted now. And there already have been targeted attacks that have been successful in Vermont, Oregon, New York, and California. All of them have been hit with ransomware. So Microsoft and the National Security Agency have been working on trying to shut down these networks, but obviously they're still being effective. Healthcare is definitely an area where we're seeing a large increase in targeted attacks. It has been about the third top targeted market up until now. I think with all these recent attacks and what may be coming, it'll probably move up to maybe one of the second or first targeted industries.
Thank you, Lisa. And we're seeing that as well from our side. And healthcare is a primary focal point for these types of attacks right now. But other verticals are also on this attack vector list. 50% of the ransomware attacks out there lead to data exfiltration. So it's not just a matter of holding your data hostage. They're now actually taking your data and selling it on the dark web, basically making it very impossible for you to have control over your data. So these attacks are very serious right now. And I understand that these payments that are out there, the bounties that are being held out there for payment to get your data back is around $250,000 right now on average. Some of the larger healthcare industries that are attacked are in the millions. So this is obviously still a very serious vector of attack that's out there. And I just wanted to bring up to light to remind you that ransomware is extremely important to be protective. I'm going to stop there for a second and ask, is there anybody who has any questions about ransomware or any concerns that they may have about their current ability to be protective against ransomware?
Hey, Scott, it's Lisa.
Yes. Yeah, Lisa.
At our last FDIC exam, I wish Bill was on the call so he could chime in, but we replicate across the network, and we encrypt the data when, at rest. But the FDIC wanted us to physically take it off the network.
Okay.
And we, kind of shaking our heads, not exactly sure how we would do that. So Brent and I came up with a plan that we took it off the domain and we have it has its own password. Are you seeing are you seeing this happen? We've got, how do you take it off the network without going backwards and go back to, tennis shoes, tape and things like that?
Lisa, that is a great question. And it's not designed, that request to take it off the network wasn't designed for you to put it back into a physical control that you can unplug. That's not where they were wanting to take that. They want it to be air gapped. They wanted to have a separation. They want to put your backups on an island. And that's exactly what you guys did. What Brent set up for you is that there's no one-to-one relationship to the primary network and the backup source. And that is what they were looking for.
Good. Yeah. I think that examiner actually said, you ought to put it on tape. And then we were like, no. But, the air gap, I like, that's what we were trying to go for, is that air gap. And I think,
Yeah. And Lisa, I can add just a little bit in terms of, we are doing that with the majority of our clients that are, making those investments and willing to do that. Having separate passwords is certainly a great step. Having it, like Scott's saying, on an island of its own. What the hackers are doing is they're getting into the environment. And if you don't have the proper tools to be able to tell that somebody's sitting on your network, they generally stay there about an average of 200 days. And they try to figure out, where's your backup? Where's your financial information? Where are your monitoring tools? Where's your antivirus? And so they're sitting there trying to take all of that offline. So if you have tools that tell you that somebody's on your network, you can stop that sooner. But they're getting much smarter in that they used to have a ransomware attack, and because they were not attacking the backup systems, people would just not pay the ransomware and they would just restore from backup. Well, it didn't take the hackers long to figure out that they need to get to the backup systems. So that's definitely one of the things that we want to separate and make sure that if they get into your network, they can't also get to your backup systems. So I don't know if that helps a little bit more.
I'm on mute. Yes, that does. Thank you.
Perfect, Lisa. Thank you. And Lisa, thank you for the question. It's awesome. All right. So what I want to talk about next is since the pandemic, what has happened in levels of threat, what has happened in levels of protection since the pandemic has laid waste to our infrastructure. The first thing is the dark web. The dark web is cesspool of information that attackers and hackers can use to elevate their attacks against your enterprise. And what I mean by that is there's information out there about your users, all the way down to even passwords that are available in the dark web that a user used maybe previously, or maybe even still currently, if they're not in a process of updating and changing their passwords. And that's unfortunate, because there's been an enormous increase in these styles of attack, 429% level increase since March in these types of attacks, where PII data, personal identifiable information existing in the dark web, were out there, and is causing a lot of businesses to be attacked through platform information that is available to the public. So what can we do about it? Number one, we should increase our dark web understanding. Scans and programs that you're using, or sources that you're utilizing to understand vulnerability in your network. Is it possible for them to also leverage the dark web for that understanding and provide you insight to what type of information is out there about you and or your business? Leverage password managers to have better control over passwords and force password change and password differential, so that there's no association to, once again, business to personal emails. Leverage multi-factor. Don't let one door be your only preventive to your inside information, to your business information. Don't let that one door be the complete denial of service for that attacker. If they get through that door, they get into your business. So add a multi-factor principle so that there's a second leg to that authentication process, so they no longer can get into your business simply by a compromised password. And disable and delete stale accounts. Employees come and go, and if they leave, don't leave those accounts in your Active Directory, so that they can be utilized and processed through an attack, simply because it still exists in your AD. Keep your AD fresh and up to date, and don't let those stale accounts burn you. Any questions about the dark web types of threats? The next one is nocturnal attackers. Attackers don't work 9 to 5. And that's unfortunate. And a lot of them actually leverage their attacks more after hours than they do during hours. There's actually a 14% increase since the pandemic of attacks that occur during weekends, because they know businesses are not active during those times. And so that types of threat modeling, where an attacker can work anytime, 24/7, makes it very that operates from an 8 to 5 sequence to be preventive, and they know that, and they try to take advantage of it. What can we do about it? Obviously, putting eyes to our network 24/7 is important. Being involved in our Technology One Source program does put our NOC on eyes with your network, and the recognitions of those heartbeats are constantly in our face, so that we know if something goes offline or unavailable to us, so that we can start a process. That's great. But maybe some security eyes on your network 24/7 would be beneficial to recognize the possibility of threat, not just the occurrence of threat. Those are platforms that you may want to consider moving into. That around-the-clock coverage is almost becoming a necessity in the effort of being preventive against these types of attacks. Any questions about nocturnal attackers?
Would FireEye be one of the examples of the programs you're talking about?
FireEye would be a great example of the ability to have 24/7, 365 into your infrastructure at a level where it's recognizing activity and not just a signature-based identification. And what I mean by that is, malware has signatures that can be recognized by malware programs,
Right.
and therefore be preventive. But if something's behaving anomalous in your enterprise, if it's doing something that it's not normally supposed to be doing, talking to systems it's not normally supposed to be channeled to, that awareness is effective in those types of controls. Great question. Patchwork. Patching has become a little bit of a problem since the pandemic state. And why? It's because systems are not as readily available to patching as they are when they're in the business, when they're in the office. They're at home, those systems go offline. They don't keep them available to the patch. Some patch sequences are scheduled to occur after hours, like at the 3 a.m. hour, as a good example. And if that system's not online at 3 a.m., it doesn't get patched. And we're seeing an increase of duration before systems are getting patched. Normally they were getting patched within 30 days. It's starting to stress out more to 40 days. And another problem with the patching is that IT is being, because of the remote presence, because of workers working from home, the connectivity, the accessibility to their data has become more of a focal point of them and less to the point of being conscious of patching. And so those things happen as well. And so if you have your own IT teams, that may be something that they're experiencing, that they're not getting to that maybe as readily as they were when it was within the offices. But the being offline is probably the most common reason for some of these delays in vulnerability management.
Hey, Scott.
Yep.
It's Leisha again. With COVID, before COVID, we probably only had one, maybe two people that had access to the network outside the bank, and now I have like 30. And I am seeing that problem with them not bringing their laptops in for patching. And you guys manage our patch system. Is there a way we could have some sort of email alert go to them that, hey, we haven't seen your, or maybe you guys have this, but maybe something to the user that says, hey, we haven't seen your laptop on the network, bring it in so we can patch it, or something like that?
Yeah, and that is in our face. At the NOC, we do get those alerts that systems haven't checked in, and we put them on an immediate notification that as soon as you see that system, as soon as it comes online, whenever it is, initiate its patching, and that can cause a little bit of a problem with maybe some performance during the patching sequencing during operations. So that's why we try to patch it after hours, but with the necessity of getting a patch kind of overweighs that. And so, yeah, it is a problem. They shouldn't have to bring their system into the network to get patched. They just need to bring it online during the patching cycles. And that's really what's a necessity. But you know what else we're also seeing is not only in the effect of vulnerability management via patching, but also the signatures that are associated to your antivirus, your malware protections. Those get delayed as well. And when those get delayed, you become more suspect and victimized by those types of threats. The next one is unsecured Wi-Fi networks. 243% increase in utilization of unsecured Wi-Fi networks for businesses. When they moved home, they moved into a Wi-Fi network that probably wasn't as strategically set up and secure as when they're in the office. It's very common. A lot of routers and small business types of wireless platforms that are come out of Office Depot or home solutions, or like Walmart's that get employed into a home network, are just not strategically designed to be secure. And there's a lot of controls that just aren't properly structured and set up to make them secure. So what happens is that you go home, you get on your Wi-Fi network, and then you open up a VPN to your business to do your job and do your work. What's the problem with that is anything and everything that sits on your network can connect to that system, because you're on a flat network at home, now has a door or a path to bring that into my business network, and that's a problem. So obviously the security of Wi-Fi is important. It should probably be in policy that if you're going to work on a home network, that you have your home network verified by your IT team, that it's secure, or at least that their consciousness of using their system on a home network and the controls and the amount of security policy that they should follow with using proper sequencing. In other words, they shouldn't be going to websites that are not business websites when they're connected through the VPN to your private network. You wouldn't allow it in your business. Why would you allow them to do it while they're at home. So these are policy controls that can probably be structured to help regulate that. Keeping firewalls and their Wi-Fi platforms updated, they probably never do. They probably take them out of a box, they plug it in, they set it up, and they never update it. And therefore, it may be very insecure. Those should be something else that should be expressed to your users when they're working at home, to make sure that your firewalls that you're using at home, your Wi-Fi networks that you're using at home, are updated and to their latest levels. And incorporate, obviously, split tunnel VPNing, so that if they have to use the business side of the VPN, it is just business stuff, and then they'd have an option to go out their own network for anything that they want to do personally. Split tunnel VPN is very effective in that type of control and can be positioned. So those are some of the things that you can do, but it's certainly an element of threat that has just jumped in volume since the pandemic start. I'm sure there may be some questions on this. What questions do you guys have about Wi-Fi networks?
Scott, this is Courtney. Can you better explain the split tunnel VPN?
Sure. So a split tunnel VPN is exactly how it sounds. There's two tunnels. One tunnel would be open to your business, and then any level of communication, shared access, application access to your business would be restricted to that tunnel. And then the other side of that tunnel, a second leg, would be straight out to the internet for them to be able to do whatever they want to do, shop Walmart online or whatever. I keep going to Walmart. I don't know why. So the whole point of a split tunnel is to be able to give the business its exclusiveness as it requires with traffic that is channeled between the home workstation and the business.
How is that necessarily set up? Is it set up on the machine and on the server so that it only allows that one avenue through, or?
It's set up on the client and the VPN client. So when the client is set up, it's set up with the idea that there's going to be personal or internet traffic, and then there's going to be intranet traffic that parses straight to your business.
Okay. Thank you for that.
Mm-hmm. Any other questions with secure Wi-Fi? Because it certainly is something that's on a definite rise since the pandemic. A lot of home systems just are not built to be safe. And you think about a flat network at home, every single device that's at home, your kids' laptops in their rooms, and your smart TVs, your Alexas, all of those are on the same flat network. And any level of compromise that it can exist on those can channel its way to your system, because it's a flat network. It's one-to-one. It's IP related. There's no separation between your business system on that home network and those devices. So when you start thinking about it like that, it's like, wow, I have to be more conscious about what I'm going to allow to happen when you're connecting to my business from that home network.
So
Scott,
go ahead.
I'm
Courtney.
sorry, go ahead. Is there certain things that you could recommend for people to have at their home network to make it not as flat as you're saying? I mean, they can secure it with a password, but are there other recommendations that you could make for those users?
Yeah, I mean, you can take your home network and divide it with that split tunneling so that there is no relationship to that information getting to that second level or that second layer of the tunnel. That can be one level of separation. Another separation is that you can put your business side of it on a different IP. You can structure it so that it's not associated to any other IP in your home network. And so then its relationship can be distinguished to only be on that platform, that only in that IP range. Would it be suspect to for anything to come to it? So you could divide it either structurally through IP controls, or you can divide it through split tunneling.
Scott, one of the questions I have is and this is certainly a question I had more when I'm traveling a lot for work or having to work on the road, but what is your recommendation if you find yourself with very limited internet access outside of like a Starbucks network or the airport network? Is there a way to protect yourself when you have very limited options?
Keep it as dialed into a control as possible. Use your hotspot on your phone before you jump on a public Wi-Fi. That is a one-to-one connection and nothing that can get to your phone through that hotspot unless they authenticate through your hotspot. So you're really minimizing the amount of interface or what can connect to you when you're on a hotspot. So that would be my recommendation, is to utilize hotspots. Any other questions with unsecured home networks? The next one is phishing with ransomware. I just want to point out how it's grown since the pandemic. 64% rise in this threat, and not just healthcare. Every vertical is victim to this, and it's 520%. I'm reading the statistic. 520% increase in this activity in Q2. Wow, what? That is just an enormous amount of impact to businesses. It's so threatening now, as we've already mentioned, and I think we've dialed in on how severe it is. But I just want to point out that since the pandemic, the attackers are taking advantage of these weak home networks, of these users when they're at home. What difference does it make if they're at home, if they're in the business? If they're in the business, they're more aware that they're in the business. They're more conscious of being protective of their information, their data, because they're working in the business. When they're at home, they're more relaxed. They're in a personal atmosphere. They're more comfortable. They're lifting their feet up on their desk and sitting back and doing their work maybe, but in a more relaxed state. And attackers take advantage of that. And they use those payloads of ransomware are distributed through phishing attacks all the time, and much more since the pandemic state. Any questions about that? The next thing I want to talk about was compliance. And this is just in the effort that every vertical that's out there that has a compliance regulation hanging over its head has responsibilities of cyber control, has the responsibilities of having their security dialed into a certain level to be preventive. Whether if you're in finance, that may be your GLBA or even your FDIC or FFIEC compliance requirements. In healthcare, you have HIPAA. There are so many different regulations and frameworks out there that you're responsible to maintain to hold that compliance, to hold those regulations in check. The one I wanted to point out to you is the last one on this list, the CMMC compliance. This is the cyber maturity model certification that has been appropriated to any relationship that you may have with a vendor that appropriates to the Department of Defense, the DoD. Now, none of you may not have any association to the DoD, and therefore this may not fall on you. But what I am hearing is that this is working so well that more federal platforms are going to start adopting this. And at some point in time, probably in 2021, you may get vendors that say, are you at this level of cybersecurity maturity? And if you're not, you may lose contracts. You may lose your ability to achieve contracts. Keep that in mind as you continually move forward with keeping your security at its best level associated to your best framework, because you don't want to lose that ability to have those contracts available to you. So any questions about that? Once again, it's right now it's just associated to the DoD, but I've heard rumors that coming in 2021, this is becoming a more adopted platform to most all federal regulated industries.
Scott, we're one of those. We're Department of Defense contractor through the Corps of Engineers. we have evaluated, and we think we will only have to, at this point, have the level 1. We're doing we've done a pre-survey to see where we stand. Then we'll have to get audited by another party to get full certification. Does NetGain offer any services in that area?
We do. And so if we go to the next slide, our essential security program that we delivers a CSO program. The CSO program basically delivers your alignment to a framework. The NIST 800-171 is that alignment for the CMMC. And so through that program, we would actually be able to measure where you're at effectively against that NIST control, that NIST framework. And once you have that, you would be very effective when you actually go out to have your audit to get your certification. If you have that framework already in place, you're probably going to have a very good chance of passing that. Probably not even at the level 1, probably level 2.
And correct me if I'm wrong, Scott, but Pine Bluff Sand and Gravel is a member of our essential security program. Are they not?
Well, in part, they have the vulnerability scanning piece of it. I believe that Drew has the incident response piece of it available to him. They've been kind of piecemealing the platforms in, but they've not got into the VCSO platform as of yet.
Okay.
But maybe I can swing Drew over today. Other deliverables associated with that is something that Pine Bluff Sand and Gravel does take advantage of, is the vulnerability assessments associated to the security assessments. Those are leveraging the weaknesses in the assets, and that puts them under immediate understanding so that remediation platforms can be developed to align the protection of those vulnerabilities and eliminate them. That's the whole idea of that platform. There's several members on this call that do use the Essential Security program. Elliot Chester with Birch Tree is just started it. He hasn't gotten the effectiveness of it yet. I'm still in the process of diving through the data that we've collected on our baseline review, and his understanding should be coming to him very soon. But I know he's excited to get that information so that we can start building and protecting his enterprise as best as possible. And then Tony Parrish with People's Exchange Bank uses the Essential Security program. I understand Tony had to fall off the meeting to take care of an audit request, but I was going to have him speak about his successfulness of it. But if he comes back on, maybe I'll come back to him. Email protection, the understanding of how we're protecting email. Email is already talked about as being the #1 threat vector. So this program helps align the understanding of the effectiveness of the email controls. Are we quarantining emails? Do we have malware, advanced malware threat recognition in our email platforms? Do we have quarantining or encryption in place to protect sensitive information that's processed through email channels? The ability to encrypt information that's used in email is so important nowadays. If you send out an email that's not an encrypted platform, it's open text. If it's intercepted, it can be read. You might as well just put it in the newspaper, because it can be read by anybody and everybody that is in the has the ability to intercept that information. So when you put in an encryption platform behind it, it secures it. It makes it so that it can't be read by anybody else. And this is only talking about outbound email. Your internal email is secure within itself, is within its own platform. But outbound email, once you hit send, if it doesn't have an encryption platform associated to it, it's open text. Think about that. It's very important that you have a level of security, and not just the information that may be sensitive to the business, but just the keeping the information that the businesses send out secure across the board. I think is certainly important. And most of the compliances out there are now demanding it, that you have an encryption platform for what they call data in motion. And so having that platform in place is certainly important. And it's an evaluation of that, if it's working effectively for the business. The social awareness platform is the uptick
Hey,
of.
Scott.
Yep.
Hey, I have a question about the email encryption. We're increasingly seeing companies encrypt all of their ingoing and outgoing email. Are you guys seeing that? Do you recommend that,
Yes.
to your client? Just
Yes.
everything is encrypted.
All data in motion should be encrypted. It should be, because once again, if it's intercepted, it's open text. It can be read. There may be not anything in there that's in an email that is really sensitive to the business. It may not be Kentucky Fried Chicken secret recipe, but it may have information about other users in the organization or who you're sending an email to. Then a hacker could be able to intercept and say, I'm going to go after those people because I know they're real. I know they're live. They're in an email process. And so, yes, encrypting everything that goes out of your organization should be done.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Social awareness. Obviously, we have partnered with KnowBe4 to bring best-in-class social awareness platforms to your industry. This program is designed to deliver phishing testing campaigns to improve social understanding for your end users so that they know what threat looks like. And if they make a mistake, they're enrolled in training programs to educate them. It's not a punishment. It's an education platform. We want you to get better. We want you to recognize what you did wrong so that the next time you may not fall victim to something that was real, maybe a real malicious attack that we can maybe put on the shelf because we've improved our awareness of our users to recognize that threat. That's the whole idea behind these platforms, is to maybe have a very high social awareness score early based on the fact that they haven't been educated, but over a period of time that should come down. And we see a better effect of protection by our end users because they're our weakest link. So we have to give them the information to educate them and help them be aware of what threat looks like and what they should do when threat occurs. And then incident response. This is the thing that I mentioned to Drew that he has on his, I believe it's on his table. Hopefully it's at the top of your stack, Drew, for adoption. The incident response program was built to help you sleep better. It's the recognition of what you're doing right now with incident response planning, what your business continuity planning is. Is there an alignment to what leadership expects will happen to what IT can actually deliver? There's tabletop modeling that's done to exercise the IRP so that we can make sure that it's going to be effective. And then there's requirements of disaster recoveries and then the review of the results of those DR solutions. And then the most important piece is that the program is there if a breach does happen. If something does happen, and it can happen, there's nothing that's 100% protective, but it's the protection and the driving of the incident response plan through the program. So let's look at that real quick. The IRP program is really designed as it starts out as a preparation. It's an understanding of what's going to happen if there's a breach, who is going to be doing what, and what systems are going to be a priority of recovery, and what relationship do those systems have to other systems. In other words, if I bring up one system, is there a dependency to another system that's not up yet that's going to cause that system to not be effective? I need to understand the relationships between systems so that we can bring them up in proper sequence so that they perform normally. And so the whole preparation of it is to have that identification, to have that understanding about who's going to do what, what's going to be involved, what our restoration procedures are going to be, and what the orders of those restoration procedures are going to be. If a breach does happen, then there's a detection sequence that happens and an analysis that's done so that we can understand root cause. Where did it come in at? What actual vector was utilized, and where is that port or that particular system vulnerable that's causing the strife within our organization? We have to have a recognition of that, because then we're going to move immediately into containment and eradication, right? We're going to contain the device or contain the systems that are under infection. We're going to try to create what's called a clean network. We're going to have a network that is completely uninfected by the infection, and we're only going to bring clean systems into that network. And that will be our recovery part. We won't recover in a dirty network. We're going to recover in a clean network. And so once the recovery is completed, we know we have a clean platform that's no longer under infection. We can go back and do our detection analysis once again, make sure that there's nothing that's going to re-threaten us before we move into post-incident activity. And that's a very important part that's sometimes a lot missed. A lot of times we do our backups and our recoveries and we're fine with it. But the post-incident part is, what happened? Why did we get breached? What happened that caused us to get infected? And what can we do to make sure that it doesn't happen again? And so once we have that understanding, we go back to our preparation and we install those checks and balances, those protections, those controls that will eliminate what happened to us from happening again. That's the whole idea behind the program. It's recurring. If a breach happens again, it starts all over again. But this is how an IRP works. So I'm going to open the floor to quick questions about incident response planning.
Well,
yeah, go ahead.
Sorry.
Go ahead, Drew.
Okay, we've tasked Nathan, our IT guy, with coming up with all these plans, 3 years ago. Written, documented, and I think he's contracted with NetGain for assistance for those for this year.
That's what I want to hear. That's
what
I want to hear. Yeah, it's so important. This is, like I said, this is the thing that makes you sleep better. Beyond all other controls, you can be preventive as much as you want. As you can go as far in prevention as you can. But if something happens, if something does brute force its way in, if some user does make a mistake and click that malicious email, you have to have a plan that's tested, verified, that it's going to deliver what it's supposed to deliver in accordance with what leadership is expecting that it's going to deliver. And this is the evaluation of that program. And this is the sequence that's going to happen in the program through the Essential Security Program of assistance with an IRP. And so I just wanted to reflect the steps that are responsible for an effective IRP program and how it's built into our Essential Security offering. I know Elliot may not have been thinking about a breach, but I know he's probably like all excited that it exists within his program.
Yeah, I'll just add that we almost had to do some sort of program like this just because the fact that we had an event happen back in February of 2019 and our cyber insurer carrier would not underwrite us again. So we luckily found another carrier that did, and then we signed up for this program. So
excellent. You know, and you make a great point about insurance carriers. Make sure in your cyber insurance that you're reading the small print. Make sure that you're understanding if there's any element of control that they're expecting that's happening to be protective of their insurance program. I've seen it. There's supposed to be a strong social awareness platform going on, and users are supposed to be educated. And if that's not happening, and they are the reason or cause of the infection, you may not be protected if you're not processing that in accordance with what the agreement states that you have to be doing. So read the small print, verify that you're protected if a breach happens. So I'd hate for you to get involved in thinking you have cyber insurance as an assistance program. It's not a complete program. It's an assistance program to help you through a breach. I don't want you to be unable to use that. Any other questions about incident response or cyber insurance? Does everybody here have cyber insurance? Just go through the room. Courtney?
Sorry, yes, I have cyber insurance.
Leisha?
Absolutely, yes.
Drew?
We do with our captive insurance group. Yep.
Elliot?
yep, we do.
Okay, great. Is Tony back? No, he's still gone. Okay. Fantastic. All right. Well, like I said, get those documents out, dust them off, pull them out of the drawer, make sure that you read this fine print, make sure that you're practicing all the elements of control and protection that they expect you that you're doing. All right. On the next slide, this is a slide that's mostly about log management. I know a lot of the compliance controls out there are pushing for stronger log management control. Why? Why is log monitoring so important for your business? It's important for your business because there is information out there on every system, every device that provides understanding about what's happening on that device. And if you don't have something that's looking at that information, you cannot know what you don't know. It could be preventive. You could find something that can recognize a threat before a threat becomes threatening. That's certainly an element of good log management control. Unfortunately, there's an enormous amount of data in logs, enormous amount of data. And a lot of businesses just don't have the personnel to be able to manage the amount of information. We call it alert fatigue. And it's unfortunate because the information could be out there to be protective against a threat and you just don't have it. Or maybe you have the people that can be assigned to look at your logs 24/7, 365. Maybe you have that, but are they skilled to do that? Are they skilled to recognize threat in security logs? It's not an engineering understanding, it is a security understanding, requires security professionals. The longer that something exists within your infrastructure that's threatening, and we can go to the next slide, the longer that it sits there, the more impact it creates into your organization. On average, 314 days for a threat to sit in an organization, maturing itself to be as threatening and as impacting as it possibly can be once it finally launches. And most times it takes about 84 days to contain it. completely from the infrastructure, getting it out of root levels of systems and making sure that it doesn't kick itself back on again later on down the road. It can be very difficult. And so you need to have controls in place that are evaluating your logs and providing you the information that is probably contained within there that can be identifiable to threat. Once again, maybe post-threat, maybe pre-threat, but it is out there and it can be utilized and leveraged and be very effective in protecting your organization. Once again, cyber or compliance models are starting to push for more constant and review of what's happening on your logs. Any questions about that? The next one is the effectiveness of how we can improve or what you should do about the log management controls. Obviously, a monitoring and detection platform is certainly important to be able to recognize those threats. But across your entire environment, don't just put eyes on your firewall and think that you're good. But don't put eyes just on your Active Directory controllers or your domain controllers and think that you're good. Keep eyes across your entire environment. NetGain can help leverage all of these controls for you. So if there's something that you've like, hey, I am interested in this, you need to reach out, let us know. We can help mature this for you. If you're going to have agreements during a breach, if you're going to have the necessity of running out of another business or the dependency of infrastructure that's not going to need to be brought to you because you've lost an entire platform to a tornado or something like that, make sure your SLAs are up to date. Make sure that you got service level agreements that are going to deliver the business or deliver the equipment to you effectively to responding to that breach. Try to get a platform that can eliminate as much of the noise as possible. Keep it to a minimum so that you can be effective in your control. And conduct cyber exercises. I mentioned the tabletop modeling. That's very effective in exercising what you can do in a control. I mentioned Red Team in here. That's something that NetGain is modeling for 2021. Red Team is a more exploit-driven platform that actually, from a hacker's perspective, what they can actually break into. And those types of exercises executed once or twice a year are very effective in staying secure. Add threat intelligence modeling. Drew mentioned FireEye. That's threat intelligence modeling, right? Not just a signature-based model that's an AV or a malware platform, but the effectiveness of a platform that can actually use AI to sit there and say, hey, I don't like the way that's behaving. What it's trying to do is not something that's normal, and I'm going to restrict it. And then keep your vulnerabilities in front of you. Keep your recognition and have regular vulnerability scans of your enterprise done so that you know where weakness exists so that it can be remediated. My last slide is the top tips on securing a remote workforce. This was mentioned earlier by Courtney. I hope Scott talks about this. This is it. These are the things that you guys should be doing to help secure a remote workforce. Only use company provided devices. Don't let them use their personal devices to connect to your business. Hardened devices secured by your businesses primary is so important. You don't know what those systems are doing. You don't know what those personal systems have connected to, what they've downloaded from the internet. You don't know what's on them. Don't let those systems connect to your private network. Only company provided devices. Ensure that your devices and systems are fully protected. Make sure their AVs are installed, their malwares are up to date, their patches are all installed. Make sure they're as fresh as they possibly can be. Encrypt your devices. If something gets stolen out of the back of a cab, out of the trunk of your car, out of your house, make sure that it's encrypted so that there's no way the attacker, whoever stole that, can access your information. If you're not encrypting your devices, then you're subject to having your data stolen. Create a secure connection back to the office. We talked about this, the split tunneling, the VLAN, the VPNs. That is the most effective way to have that secure connection back to your office. Hotspots, and great point to Tim on using public service Wi-Fi. Scan and secure your email constantly. Keep a healthy practice of email protection. Keep your email at the top of mind for securing it. Enable web filtering. Don't let your users go to websites that are threatening, that can deliver payloads down to your business network that can cause all kinds of strife. So use good web filtering, and not just content filtering, but white and blacklisting capable web filters. Enable cloud storage and file platforms. Don't let users save files on their local system. Tell them to use shares. Build OneDrive shares so that they can actually store their data in something that's going to get backed up, because nothing on their local system is probably getting backed up. So make sure that you have some level of cloud storage that's set up for them to keep and centralize their file and data information. Manage and use removable storage and other peripherals. You need to make sure that you understand what's leaving and being installed to that system. So make sure that you have controls in place that can provide you that understanding that this data left this machine and went to this peripheral drive, or this was introduced to this machine from this peripheral drive. Make sure you have the ability to do that in your controls. Control your mobile devices. Cell phones, if they're company provided, then you should have them on a managed on a mobile device platform that actually can control that device and wipe that device should that device become compromised. If it's a personal device, then your policies need to be very organized and controlling about what they can do with that mobile device using your business email, that you're going to wipe that business email off of that device should they lose or have that device compromised. They need to understand that. You should have a form signed by each user saying that they understand the requirements of the mobile device protection. And make sure that your people have a way to report their security issues, right? Don't just sit there and expect that they know what to do if there's a breach. Don't expect them to have that understanding about awareness without education. Educate your people about what they're supposed to do when something happens. And if they can't reach the first number on the call tree, give them a call tree to what they can reach and make sure that they can reach that at all cases, whether that's your local IT or whether that's a NetGain personnel. Make sure that they have the understanding about what they're supposed to do if there's a security issue. Any questions about working remotely? All right. I think I was a little over, Tim, but I am done.
Courtney, did you have something?
No, I'm good. Thank you.
Yeah. Very well done, Scott. Super informative.
Great.
Thank you very much for that presentation. I know I always learn a lot from your presentations.